Would you believe it if we told you that the Russian Navy's Black Sea Fleet has shaped maritime power dynamics for over 2 centuries? No? We get it. Western powers like Britain and the USA tend to take all the glory, but make no mistake, this fleet has not only seen the history of countless battles, it's actually written about it. Here's the truth behind the Russian Navy Black Sea Fleet and the dark secret the Soviets would rather you forget. As its name implies, the Russian Black Sea Fleet is the fleet of the Russian Navy in the Black Seas, the Sea of Azov, and the Mediterranean Sea. While many think it began in 1918, when the Russian SFSR inherited the fleet, its true origins can be traced to 1783, following Russia's victory over the Ottoman Empire in the Russo-Turkish War. Its founder was Grigory Pometkin, close advisor and statesman to Empress Catherine the Great, and it was built to secure Russia's southern borders and expand its naval presence. The fleet was initially based at Sevastopol in the newly acquired Crimea. Formerly commanded by admirals such as Dmitry Senyavin and Pavel Nakhimov, the Black Sea Fleet has been of great historical and political importance for Russia. In the Russo-Turkish War of 1787 to 1792, Russia solidified its hold over Crimea, with Admiral Fyodor Yushakov leading Russian naval forces to defeat the Turkish fleet at the Battle of Kerch Strait in 1790. This stopped Turkish forces from landing in Crimea. And how about Yushakov's subsequent victory at Tendra? With the heroics of the fleet, Russians were able to seize Izmail, a powerful Ottoman stronghold of the Black Sea, which was twice besieged without effect. Fast forward to 1853, and the Black Fleet proved once again why it was almost unstoppable in its prime. It completely destroyed Turkish naval forces at the Battle of Sinop after the Turks had declared war on Russia. As of the 22nd of June 1941, the Black Sea Fleet of the Soviet Navy had 44 submarines, and that's why they played a key role in World War II, albeit not easy. The Axis captured Crimea in mid-1942 and had already made a significant advance in southern Russia. Worse, the technical advantage Soviet surface ships had over the Axis was crippled by German air superiority. Anyone with an unbiased logic would understand why the Soviet fleet could have performed badly. Air bombs were lethal, and most of the Soviet ships sunk or destroyed by bombing. Yet, despite adversary in its way, including heavy damage, the Soviet fleet still shone like a million stars. It fought alongside the Red Army during the siege of Odessa and the Battle of Sevastopol against the Axis forces. Commanded by Russian Vice Admiral Philip Akhterbatsky and Lev Vladimirsky, the Black Sea campaigns were a series of operations involving Axis and Soviet naval forces in the Black Sea and surrounding coastal areas during World War II, spanning from 1941 to 1944. It was primarily centered on controlling the strategic waters and coastal territories essential for securing supply routes, troop movements, and territorial gains. Why? Because for both the Axis powers and the Soviet Union, dominance over the Black Sea meant greater leverage in the Eastern Front. Victory for the Axis meant they could cut off Soviet access and bolster their own forces advancing through Eastern Europe, while the Soviet Navy and coastal defenses worked to protect key cities, ports, and vital shipping lanes for vital resources and reinforcements. Of course, the Axis failed. By the end of the war, the Soviet Union effectively dominated the Black Sea region, controlling the entire north and east of the Black Sea. Pro-Soviet regimes were installed in Romania and Bulgaria, and were required to supplement the strength of the Soviet Black Sea Fleet, according to the Warsaw Pact. Curious about some of the submarines that led them to these victories? First off, we have the M111, a Malyutka-class Series 12 short-range diesel-powered attack submarine of the Soviet Union. Commonly referred to as Baby or Little One, the M-class subs were a class of small, single or one-half-hull coastal submarines built in the Soviet Union and extensively used during World War II. As part of the Black Sea Fleet, M111 fought tooth and nail against Axis shipping with torpedoes. Commanded by Yaroslav Iasliani before he was moved to another vessel, the M111's maneuverability and ease of deployment were invaluable in the confined waters of the Baltic and Black Seas. Like all vessels in the Malyutka class, she was designed to prioritize simplicity, efficiency, and stealth. At only 37.5 meters in length, these subs were smaller than many contemporary submarines, and they also had a single hull construction with a diesel-electric propulsion system, which allowed them to reach a maximum surface speed of approximately 15 knots and a submerged speed of 8 knots. But despite its speed and size, the streamlined design allowed the Malyotka class to operate in shallow waters and conduct rapid attacks before slipping back to safer waters. Speaking of attacks, the M111 was armed with two 533mm torpedo tubes located in the bow, carrying up to 2 torpedoes, a relatively small arsenal compared to other submarines of the era. But hey, she was never meant to be a heavy hitter. The submarine's primary mission was to be swift and launch surprise attacks on enemy shipping rather than engaging in prolonged battles. Think of it like guerrilla-style hit-and-run tactics. Some M-class submarines were also fitted with a small deck gun for surface engagements, though these were generally less powerful than those found on larger submarines. In all, apart from the two 533mm torpedo tubes in the bow, the M111 had 2 anti-submarine, or ship torpedoes, and one 45mm semi-automatic deck gun. Throughout her service in the southern Black Sea, M111 sank 2 Nazi German ships and a Romanian vessel for a total of 4,719 GRT. But don't take this to mean she was perfect. The small size and minimal armament restricted the submarine's offensive capabilities. Plus, she had limited battery power that reduced her underwater endurance. These factors meant that the M111 was more vulnerable in open or heavy patrolled waters where sustained stealth and defense were critical. Moving on though, we have the Soviet submarine L-4. As part of the L-class, or the Leninets class, if you will, the L-4 was a long-range diesel-electric submarine built for the Soviet Navy in the late 1930s. Engineered mainly for extended range patrols and offensive missions in deeper waters, unlike the short-range Malyotka-class submarines, the L-class was simply a different gravy. They were built as mine layers and drew design inspiration from the British L-class submarines, HMS L-55, which was lost during the British intervention in the Russian Civil War. And her engineers also incorporated lessons from the earlier Dekabrist-class submarines. The subs in this class typically had a saddle tank structure and stored mines in 2 rear galleries, the latter of which was first introduced on the Russian submarine Krab back in 1912. Overall, the Soviets viewed this class as one of the more impressive models, with groups 3 and 4 of the series having powerful engines and great top speeds. L-4 in particular primarily served in the Baltic and Black Seas during World War II, where she was deployed against German and Axis shipping convoys. With a length of 78 meters, the L-4 was more than twice the size of the M111, with greater displacement of about 1,000 tons when surfaced. Constructed with robust steel to withstand deeper dives and longer patrol durations, the L-4 had a diesel-electric propulsion system that allowed it to a surface speed of approximately 17 knots and 9 when submerged. This allowed her to patrol waters farther from Soviet shores and target strategic Axis shipping lanes better than the M111. And yes, she was better armed. She had 6 torpedo tubes, 4 in the bow and 2 in the stern, capable of carrying a mix of 533mm torpedoes. This firepower significantly enhanced its combat potential, allowing her to conduct repeat attacks on enemy vessels during a single patrol. And how about her 100mm deck gun? It was super handy for surface engagements, especially against smaller and unarmed merchant vessels. She also had one 45mm gun and carried 14 mines, making her a well-grounded submarine capable of attacking a wide range of ships, from unarmed cargo vessels to military escorts. Alas, for all her strengths, the L-4's design had notable weaknesses. She was less maneuverable than smaller classes like the Malyotka, and her large profile made it more detectable by enemy sonar and aircraft. Additionally, like many Soviet submarines of the time, the L-4's diesel-electric engines limited its underwater endurance. So while she had the ability to venture further, she couldn't operate prolonged engagements. But hey, she was super successful. For her service, the submarine was awarded the Order of the Red Banner. She also had great victories against Axis boats, including torpedoing the German tanker Friedrich, whose loss prevented her use during the Axis evacuation of Crimea during the Crimean Offensive. In total, L-4 sank 8 enemy vessels, which amounted to 16,940 GRT. Her mines also damaged the German barge F-130. In an artillery duel, she damaged the German barge F-329. Through engagements like these, the L-4 shifted Axis supply chains. Sure, she was not as advanced as some German submarines, but the reliable design and capable armament she possessed made her a valuable asset in the Soviet effort to weaken Axis forces, particularly in contested waters where every disrupted convoy could make a world of difference. Not that they were always successful, though. Remember the Shuka-class submarines? On January 23, 1930, The USSR Revolutionary Military Council approved a submarine design aimed at operations in closed theaters. Plans initially targeted up to 200 submarines across 3 progressively larger and longer-range versions. But due to World War II, only 88 were commissioned. Still, the Shuka-class submarines became the Soviet Navy's second most numerous after the M-class, which had 111 units. Also referred to as the Sh or Sh class, these submarines were medium-sized, but they significantly suffered heavy losses throughout the war. The Baltic, Black Sea, and Northern fleets lost 60 to 70% of their submarines. The Pacific Fleet finished without any, though this was because of the tranquil nature of the theater. Many operations started in the autumn of 1945, when the Japanese fleet was largely defeated. 3 submarines were, however, lost for non-combat reasons. In all, 35 Shuka-class submarines were lost, and the last surviving members of the class in the Soviet Navy were decommissioned in the mid-1950s and scrapped during the following years. In June 1954, 2 submarines from this class, S-121 and S-123, along with 2 Soviet M-class submarines, were provided to the People's Liberation Army Navy, forming the foundation of China's submarine force. Unlike the M-class submarines, which were renamed, the Shuka-class submarines were borrowed specifically for training purposes and kept their original names. But let's talk about the S-123. Operating in the Black Sea, she engaged in several missions against Axis convoys and enemy ships transporting supplies. As expected, she measured about 58 meters in length and had a displacement of around 580 tons when surfaced. She was built with a sturdy steel hull for durability and juiced by diesel-electric engines that let her reach a top surface speed of roughly 13 knots. Like the M111, her compact size and streamlined design allowed for effective operations in shallow coastal areas, where she took advantage of her evasive maneuvers. Armament-wise, she carried 4 bow torpedo tubes and 2 stern torpedo tubes, and was equipped with 2 45mm semi-automatic guns for surface engagements against unarmed or lightly defended vessels. However, just like the Mayoka class, the compact size of the Shuka-class submarines also had its drawbacks. Its limited space and smaller fuel capacity restricted its operational range, and it also lacked advanced sonar and communication technology seen in later submarine models. As far as success stories come, the S-123 had little going for it. She was secretly ordered to target all neutral and enemy vessels entering the Black Sea to disrupt the supply of strategic materials to Nazi Germany. And on the 23rd of February 1942, she sank the 464 GRT Turkish ship Kenkea with gunfire west-northwest of Bosphorus. This was one of the only ships she sank, totaling 633 GRT, but the victory was short-lived. In the early hours of the next day, S-213, under the command D.M. Donesco, fired a single torpedo that swiftly sank the Struma, a ship carrying Jewish refugees from Romania to Palestine. Many passengers were trapped below deck and drowned, while others managed to survive the initial sinking by clinging to debris. However, with no immediate rescue, all but one succumbed to drowning or hypothermia. The sole survivor was a 19-year-old refugee named David Stolier, who was rescued the next day by a Turkish rowing boat crew. Originally, it was thought that a stray mine had sunk the Struma, but in the 1960s, historian Jürgen Rohr confirmed that Shea 213 was responsible. More disappointment followed. On March 2, 1942, S-213 fired a torpedo at an unidentified merchant ship northeast of Bosphorus but missed. The following day, it launched another torpedo at the Turkish vessel Adana, northeast of Bosphorus, and missed yet again. Her misery came to an end on October 14, 1942, off the coast of Tulcea, Romania. The torpedo narrowly missed the German submarine chaser UJ-116, and although the S-213 is believed to have been the attacker, UJ-116 responded with depth charges. For a long time, it was thought that the S-213 was destroyed in this exchange. However, it was later proven to be sunk by a mine, resulting in the loss of the entire crew. On November 15, 2008, divers from the Aquarius Dive Center, including 2 Romanians and 1 Dutch, discovered the submarine 12 miles off the coast of Constanta. The identity of S-213 was officially confirmed on August 23, 2010, and reported to both Romanian authorities and Russian representatives. The damage observed on the submarine indicated it had likely struck a mine, which had destroyed its resignation markings. This delayed its identification until 2010. By 1943, the Russian Black Sea Fleet was reduced to only 29 submarines. And in the following year, its surface fleet was practically non-operational due to a poor state of repair. Most of the offensive work was carried out by small vessels and the Soviet Naval Air Force. With the fall of the Soviet Union and the demise of the Warsaw Pact, the military importance of the fleet was degraded, and it suffered significant funding cuts and the loss of its major missions. In 1992, most of the fleet's personnel, armaments, and coastal facilities came under the jurisdiction of the newly independent Ukraine, since they were located within its territory. Subsequently, the Ukrainian government initiated the formation of its own navy, drawing from the Black Sea Fleet, with several ships and ground units declaring their allegiance to Ukraine. However, the situation quickly escalated. This situation quickly resulted in tensions, with many officers who remained loyal to Russia. Pro-Ukrainian sailors labeled the officers who remained loyal to Russia as drunkards and villains, who were harassed along with their families. To add salt to the injury, they were branded as traitors to Russia, with graffiti designs ridiculing them throughout the area. Meanwhile, pro-Russian separatist groups became increasingly involved in the local politics of Ukraine's autonomous Republic of Crimea and Sevastopol, where the main naval bases were located, and began collaborating with pro-Moscow sailors. However, despite the tensions, the Black Sea Fleet maintained a supporting role, particularly in preventing Ukrainian naval vessels from leaving Crimea. And with that, we close the curtains on the fascinating history of the Russian Navy's Black Sea Fleet, from its inception through the post-World War II era. Interested in learning more about the evolution of the world's top naval fleets? Well, you're in luck, because this is the perfect spot. Just make sure to like, subscribe, and click the notification bell so you never miss an update on our future videos. But don't stop here. Go through our other videos in the channel for even more intriguing insights into naval history and technology. Thanks for watching, and see you in the next video.